Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today I have Drake with us from the Grimdark Breakdowns, a new YouTube channel that is, trying to better the Warhammer community through knowledge of the game. How you doing today, Drake?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good, man. Thursday, almost Friday, trying to get through the week, so I can play some Warhammer. You know, the usual.
Yep, I feel that. I was fighting a cold that my kids gave me. I was actually supposed to go play an in-person game yesterday, but I had to bail out on it, so I'm trying to reschedule it for this weekend.
Nice, man. Yeah, kids will do that, man. They'll give you all sorts of stuff.
They're
All sorts
lovely.
of stuff. Yeah, aren't they? Aren't they? Well, here's the thing, right? Like when you reached out to me, you kind of gave me your channel information. I watched a couple videos and I really enjoyed the way you broke down the game. So, what is your take on Warhammer 40K and what is Grimdark Breakdowns trying to do for the Warhammer community to make it better, to improve it?
Yeah, so when I started playing, I was very let me rephrase. When I started collecting and painting, I was very intimidated because of the rules and how I thought my perception, and your perception is your reality, but my perception of what like playing in a tournament would be. And so for nearly 12 years, I didn't play. I just collected models and painted them and would watch people play, but I never went and played. In all honesty, I was just very intimidated that I was going to go and get a rule wrong or, something like that. And I had some friends that got into it. And so we finally went. And then what I experienced was the polar opposite. I've been playing for about 5 years now, and I can count on my two hands how many like bad opponents I've actually had in 5 years. And that's playing a lot of Warhammer. So when I decided to start the channel right around Christmas, I kind of really wanted to let people know not only like tips and tricks and how to get better at the game and all of that, but in a big way that this game is way more accessible than I think the average player thinks. I think the average person thinks that if they're not a sweaty try hard, they're never going to win anything and they're never going to have any fun and blah 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 blah. And I think that the two big misnomers that I want to debunk is winning doesn't equal fun. Some of my most fun games I've ever had, I lost, and they were a blast. And the second one is that you can like getting good at the game doesn't mean that you have to memorize every rule. No one plays a perfect game of Warhammer, and you're gonna make mistakes. It's all about having a good game and honestly just having good sportsmanship. And if you can embody those things, you'll find that this is a really, really awesome community that people just want to tell you how cool your models look and have a fun game and then laugh about your mistakes afterwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that that experience is especially true within the last, 4 or 5 years as well. How long have you been playing Warhammer 40K or collecting, I should say? You said over 12 years ago?
Yeah, so I only know this just because I started right before my wife and I started dating. So I have been collecting models for 16 years. So I've been collecting and painting. And then about 5 years ago, I started playing. And for the first year, I only would go to like a local store and play. I didn't play in any RTs or GTs. I didn't even know what that was. And then literally as 10th right before the end of ninth edition, when it was kind of ninth edition was winding down was when I started playing in my first like RTs. And then I really, once 10th edition launched, got into the competitive circuit, playing on a regular basis, going to, all the big ones. Luckily, living in Texas, it's very easy between Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana. Like you can, without going too far, And I say that as a Texan, too far, 6, 7, 8 hours, you can get a lot of bigger tournaments in.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot out there as far as that goes. Me living in California myself, there's a couple of events, but man, it's a drive. I think the closest GTs to me are in Palm Springs. And, well, Palm Springs is about 2 hours away, so it's not terrible, but yeah, a lot of driving.
Yeah, I'm blessed. I'm living in Dallas. We have three basically super majors a year because we've got the Warhammer one, which is coming up in May.
Hmm.
We have the Texas Open, and then we have the Lone Star Open. And the Texas Open had, sorry, I think this year 260 players, and I think last October when I did Lone Star, I think it was just shy of 300 also. So like we have like three super majors just right here, and if you want to drive 4 hours to Houston, they have two to three also.
Oh, well. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've been participating in a lot of competitive events, but
Yeah.
when did you really start going to these competitive events? Because you mentioned in the first year you really only played at the local shop, which by the way is like 98% of the player base, I feel like just plays at their local or whatever. But you started going to events how much longer after that?
Um, Honestly, it once you play, I would say 3 or 4 games at a local shop, you will get the bug of, "Oh, this is pretty fun." And then I got turned on to the concept of an RTT, which for those of you who don't know, it's a 1 day, 3 round typically tournament where you typically play one, lunch break, play two.
Right. So let me ask you this. When you started, what was the first event after an RTT or first GT that you went to? And how was the experience for you?
The first one I went to was the Texas Open, the first Texas Open, which was I believe 4 years ago, and it was um, it was an awesome experience. My very first opponent um, ended up being a player who had a golden ticket, which I didn't know at the time what that meant. For those of you who don't know what that means they've won a GT and they've been invited to Worlds, aka they're a very good player. And he was awesome. He walked me through rules. He knew my army better than I did. Really helped me with stuff, but slaughtered me. And I was like, "Oh, this is how the game's gonna be." Like, okay, it's going to be a long 2 days. And then my next game, my second game, it was a tight game and I won. And when I won, it was like, oh, wow, I can win games. And it wasn't until my third opponent where they explained to me that you're paired against people with a similar record. And so it really got me interested because I went, "Oh, well, your first game's kind of just a random draw, but then after that, theoretically, I'm playing against people of the same skill level." And that got me a lot more excited to play because the games were close. And most of my games were close. In my very first tournament, I went 2-3 and I was ecstatic. I just wanted to win a game, and I won 2 games, and I felt like in every one of them, I learned something, and it was really, really cool for me because I got to try, like I had thought I had a couple of cool tricks and tactics, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't, but, all those models that I had worked so hard on painting, I got to put on the table, and sometimes they died on turn 1, and sometimes they were heroes.
That's awesome, man. I mean, isn't that the case always when you're painting up an army and you finally have it fully painted and you present it fully painted? It's quite a different feeling than when you just field a bunch of gray soldiers.
Mm,
So I've always liked, if I can, fielding a fully painted army. It's not always possible, but it feels good when you can do it.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that you get so much inspiration, like, if you like the creative side of it. When I first went to the my first tournament, I had an army, and I went there. And then I'll never forget, as long as I live, there was a guard player who had converted his entire, he was running all cavalry. He had, I think this was before the Death Riders were out. So he had 30 of the horses, like the Rough Riders, but they were all riding polar bears. And I was like, what? And his whole army was themed like they were like Soviet Russia and stuff. It was so cool. And like when you see things like that, I think that's one of the other really cool things about this hobby, especially when you go to bigger tournaments. You get to see some people's really, really creative, minds at work of this is what they came up with and built and painted, and it's really neat.
That's really awesome. Yeah, there's some really cool armies out there, especially when you go to events that just pop, and you're like, man, like why am I not that creative?
Well, so like
you
my
know?
sister's a battle army is
Uh-huh.
completely converted. So I had made it,
Uh-huh.
and then during COVID I got sick, like everybody at some point, right? You get the bug. And I ended up watching Arcane, the League of Legends anime that was on Netflix, and it inspired me, and I converted my entire Sisters of Battle army into a League of Legend Arcane themed army. And
Oh wow.
like it was one of those things where like it took me like 3 years to do when it was all said and done. I mean, I sculpted stuff, did the whole thing, and my single, like without question, proudest achievement is I actually got best in show at a 60-person GT when I entered my army as like, an army on parade. And like I've gone 5-1 at a very like a 300-person event, and I am more proud of like getting, pats on the backs from peers about my custom army than I am that. And I think that's one of the things that you can really in this hobby in particular, there's so many different angles that you can really get some pride and like feel cool about.
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna have to send me some pictures of that because that sounds really awesome, dude. That's cool.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really great things going on in this hobby. Like you said, you have the gaming aspect, but also the hobby aspect, which is really
Hmm.
fun. I mean, just before, we did this thing, I was painting up some war walkers, and I always find that it's really relaxing to just sit down, put something on in the background, some music or something, and just paint, you know? And sometimes if that's your thing, this can be really rewarding as a hobby. And you have all these new kits coming out. You're spoiled for choice, really. So that's
Oh,
really awesome.
completely. I mean, like, regardless of where you are in your age, like, I'm 40, I've got two kids, a job, all the things. But to your point, when I'm sitting at my hobby desk, that's all I'm thinking about. Like, I'm in the process of converting an entire Eldar army right now, and literally I'll be in the shower and I'm thinking about like, ooh, what if I did that with that? And so there's just some, once you scratch that itch, I think you'd be surprised, because I've had friends that go, oh, I'm not creative at all, and then they just scratch the surface, and then before you know it, they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to try to do this, and you're like, get it, man, that'd be awesome. And by the way, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, it, just the fact that you took the initiative and you tried, it's already awesome.
That's really cool, dude. We have a couple people at our local shop who make some really cool conversion stuff, and it yeah, like not perfect, but it looks so cool, the conversion itself, that it almost doesn't even matter, because
Heck
it's so
yeah.
thematic. So you do play Eldar,
I
and
do.
it's not your first army. Your first army is
Nope.
Dark Angels, right?
So yeah, so the technical, like, my unmedicated ADD, I collected Dark Angels for about 10 years and never played a single rep of them. And I collected them all until, in, I believe it was 8th edition, if my memory serves me correct, when they did the Sisters of Battle like refresh, where they basically redid the whole range. And I was like, ooh, I have to pick those up because I wanted to paint them. And so I picked those up, and then I actually, when I started playing, I only played Sisters for like 3 years. And then I had so many Dark Angels that I was like, okay, I'll play Dark Angels and learn the Space Marine side of it. And so, I've probably, if you said, what percentage have you played? 70% of my games have been Sisters of Battle, probably 15% have been Dark Angels. And then before this year, and then probably 15% have been World Eaters, which I just picked up as a hobby project. And
Hmm.
honestly, because I had this thought of like, if I played a melee only army, it would force me to be more disciplined about movement and all of those things. Spoiler alert, it does. But
Right.
then this year, I just decided I wanted a new hobby project. So I picked up Eldar. And I think in 2.5 months, when I dive in, I dive in. I've probably played 30 games in the last 2.5 months on Eldar. And I don't think I'm like a pro by any stretch of the imagination, but I went to my very first RTT with them, and had a very good outing with it. I think I think Eldar are actually in a much better place than people think. They're not the easy win button that they once were, obviously. But one of the things we talk about on my channel a lot is right now is counter meta. The meta is all stat check. So if you can play something that's counter to that in the sense of where your stuff is not stat check, that means most of the guns or weapons that you're going to go against aren't going to be optimal into your profiles. And I think Eldar can really really thrive right now in that little window.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they do excel at scoring secondary points, whereas a lot of these more stat check armies have trouble with that typically, unless they are lucky on their secondaries, you know? So I do feel you on that. And Eldar is all about thinking about opportunities that present themselves during the game. So forcing your opponent to think about multiple different threats at once. They don't have the unit count to stop all of them. They're running Catan, or they're running big bricks of Vitrix, or they're running, big expensive units that are meant to deal with these other big threats, but are overkill against something like five Rangers, five swooping
Mm-hmm.
mobs, little units like that can just go in, score a secondary. They don't have to do a ton of damage. Like, I think the funniest moment that I've had recently playing a game was when I didn't even want to shoot my warp spiders after I teleported them because there was no point. The unit would just resurrect all the models automatically. So I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to shoot with them. I'm just going to keep them back and wait for an opportunity and force you to have to keep stuff on your expansion, or else the expansion's going to go away next turn, you know? So thinking outside of the box with this army is the way to win. And if you're a really good player with them, if you've played them a lot, you can capitalize on that more. I think really what happens is players who are newer to the game, who start Eldar, maybe Eldar their first army, they struggle into that thought process of every turn, okay, how am I going to prepare for this secondary or this secondary or this secondary? Where do I have to put my units? You know, and when that happens a lot of the time, and that they fail to kind of play the Eldar in that way, they're disappointed because the damage truly, I mean, the other day I had a squad of 10 fire dragons and Fuegan shoot at the Nightbringer, and they didn't kill it. So, and they were in melter range and everything. So I think playing around and doing different things is the way to play that faction for sure. And you've said that you have a pretty good experience with Dark Angels as well. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say the type of army Dark Angels is for anybody that's new out there playing Dark Angels? What do they want to look for to be, to practice as far as their Warhammer skills?
So if you want to play Dark Angels are a counter. Think of them as a counter punch army. So you know, I kind of break all the game into just like all the armies fit into like different archetypes. Dark Angels don't have the speed to just be like an alpha strike. I'm going to get in your face, those kind of things. What Dark Angels are all about is I'm going to give my opponent a choice. They're not going to like the choice, but I'm going to give them two choices. They can either choose to ignore this thing or deal with this thing, and they're not going to like either one of those. And then being prepared to counter both situations, because you have to plan accordingly, because a lot of your models, are going to move 5 or 6 inches, and they have, if you're playing Wrath of the Rock, which you probably are, then you've got one unit that can advance and charge. Okay, maybe it moves 9 inches now, right? But you're not flying, right? So with that being said, what you're doing is you're going, here's a decision. Neither of the options are great. You tell me what you want to do, and then you have a plan to deal with both. And, I'll give you just one example. The the lion right now is pointed great, and I honestly think the lion is the best, we'll call it Primarch, centerpiece, like leader of an army in the entire game. And the reason is because turn one, he leaves the board no matter what. And then you get to hold him and go, you cannot charge my army anywhere, or I'm just going to kill you. So you have to shoot me. Because the problem is that when you're playing Wrath of the Rock, when you're playing against it, you're going to have Deathwing Knights on one point, which have terrible OC, but they threaten that point. And so again, the where you're giving them that bad choice is by going, okay, I'm going to put these 5 Deathwing Knights on your expansion point, and I'm going to put them holistically on the point. Now they only have one OC. If you walk onto this point, I can use my stratagem for Lionel aggression to charge you at the end of your charge phase. And I bet you my Deathwing Knights will kill whatever trash you put on there to out OC me. Now, if you decide to bring something real and threatening, when you move it in, I'm going to now, at the end of your movement, rapid ingress the lion. And because you haven't charged yet, by the time you charge, I'm going to be 3, 4 inches away for that heroic. He fights first, and his profile is as of where if it's a 10 man and they have 1 health, he'll pick them all up. If it's a 5 man and they're Space Marines, he'll pick them all up. The other day I was playing, and I was working with somebody in the Discord. He went into a full-on 6 man Vitrix guard. He picked up 4 and brought the 5th one down to 1 health. So they were neutered at that point and couldn't do what they needed to do. So again, the choice is like, okay, in that example, am I going to not score my expansion objective and just work on killing those Deathwing Knights with shooting, which the downside to that choice is you're going to be behind on primary, or do I push the initiative and risk losing several units in the potential trade? And neither of them are good. Even if they're a great shooting army, nobody wants to just lose 5 primary. So you want to give them those choices and then be prepared for both answers. Um, and you also have to, and I honestly believe this with a lot of armies, every single unit in your army, with the exception of Azrael and the Lion, are expendable. Like, I'm not going to cry if anything dies. And I'm not going to cry if either of them die after turn 3. But it's a different mindset of going, oh, I'm going to deep strike my Terminators on your expansion point on turn 1. I know you're going to kill them on turn 2 or 3, but if I can keep you from scoring those 5 primary, or mess up your game plan enough because I've given you bad decisions to deal with, it's absolutely worth losing that 300 points. And so Dark Angels play a very different game because you know stuff's going to die. You're just saying, I'm going to give you really difficult decisions. And if you choose wrong, I'm going to punish you. If you choose right, you're still going to probably get punished. But wrong, you're going to be very punished.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense with the experience I've had playing against them as an army as well. It's definitely a tough nut to crack in a lot of different ways. So that's really awesome. And you just started playing Eldar. What is your kind of thoughts on playing Eldar so far?
So I have played just about every detachment at least a couple times because I wanted to get kind of a feel for it. My first thought was just having played Eldar in the past was okay, I'm gonna play this similar to World Eaters, and I'm just gonna table you by turn 4, and I'll score willy-nilly because I got all these units. And then I went, holy crud, like we don't kill that. I mean, we kill, but we don't kill like I thought, like at least like we used to. So, okay. Then I kind of switched my mindset and went, okay, I'm going to play this similar to how I play Sisters. I'm going to try playing these guys as a high tempo army and a high trading army. And they played a lot better doing that. But then when I kind of took the approach of saying, I'm going to play these as a tempo trading army, but instead going, I'm going to play these as a tempo scoring and denial army, then I started winning. Because I'll be honest, like I think I lost my first like 12 games in a row, like trying to learn the army and figure it out. But then when I stopped going, and I think this is also a huge problem with a lot of beginners, is they go, I want to play deathmatch. Don't play deathmatch. Like, as silly as it's going to sound, stand on the funny circles and run around and wave your hands during the secondaries, and you'll win a whole lot more games than playing murder ball. Um,
Oh,
when
100%.
I
Yep.
Dude, when I started using my swooping hawks or my, warp spiders or spoiler alert, I think Sky Reavers are some of the best units of the game right now. I started using my Sky Reavers to go like, I'm gonna go do some chip damage, but then I'm also gonna just stop you from being able to play the game. I'm gonna put my 75 point unit in front of 200 points of your army, and now they can't move. Like that is a crippling thing to do, and you can get ahead. And so when I started playing the army like that, I started having a lot more success.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, warp spiders being able to just jump forward 24
It's
inches
crazy.
and block your opponent from doing anything. Thumbs up to that. It's awesome. And they don't have to do any damage. That's the great part about it. Is like, it's cool if you roll a lot of dice for your, death spinners, but if they don't roll that well, it's not a big deal because they're already doing what they need to do, which is a really cool aspect of the unit that they never had in previous editions, which is really cool. So having said that, you mentioned a couple things there. Sky Reavers being really good, which I think they're good as a unit, but I want to hear your takes on the unit yourself. How have you been using them besides just, the obvious of, kind of doing a little bit of damage with shooting and stuff? How have you had success with them so far?
So I'm going to preface that this is only in coterie. All right.
Mhm.
So like I don't personally I think Raiders is a fun detachment. I don't think it's competitive. Um, I think the stratagems are too niche. I think coterie, because it solves a giant problem we have, which is being able to survive and stand on the funny circles. Um, and it's got one of the best attachment rules. It makes them wonderful units. So to your point, the obvious stuff is okay. There's 75 points. You go out there, you do some chip damage. I use them in a very similar way that I would use swooping hawks, but they're 20 points cheaper. So, like, perfect example. I played CSM last night,
Mhm.
and he brought out a rhino, had noise marines. Noise marines got out of the rhino, and they were on the midpoint. And he had just towed on, and he shot a bunch of shots into my fire prism and almost killed it. And I went, okay, cool. You've got a very good, the joke that I was making was that he had 3 noise marine units and I had 3 fire prisms, and like it was like they were our yin to each other's yang, right?
Right.
And I went, let's just send my lovely little boys out there. They flew out. They dropped a grenade. There goes one. Then they did their all of their shooting, killed a second one. And at this point, now I out OC'd them on said point. So I was like, okay. I flew in, killed a third, knowing that I was going to take some punishment on the clapback, which was totally fine. But a 75 point unit going and killing three noise marines and taking the midpoint for me. What that did, though, was it meant on his turn, he wasn't getting the midpoint. Midpoint's sticky now. Midpoint also has got hopefully a little baby bomb on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've now locked up these noise marines that are now stuck in these last three are now stuck in combat with, I think I had two, maybe three that survived. I can't remember. And so it was like I now locked up one of his three critical units. I had taken to half strength and locked them up with a very inexpensive unit. So a lot of the other thing I like doing with them a lot because they have awesome rules. So you got to keep in mind at the end of the fight phase, as long as that unit could fight, it basically gets almost a fallback no matter what move that it gets to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this case, I didn't want to do that because I was already engaged, but a lot of the time I'll fall back and get behind a wall. A lot of the time I've been scouting them forward 7, then flying them 12. So now they've gone 19 inches. If I need, I can give them obviously the +2, but a lot of the time 19 inches gets me plenty far. And literally it's like, oh no, I don't need to infiltrate. I don't care about that. My unit moves far enough that I'll get closer than 9 inches away than to your deployment zone. Take pot shots at whatever, and I will have them spaced out 1.9 inches apart just to clog up, especially if you're in like layout 1, clog up them getting out of that L. I'll spend 75 points so that you have to leave 500 points in your deployment on turn 1. Heck yeah, because it also means you're going to have a harder time getting shot lines lined up on turn 3 because you didn't get to get your engine going as fast as you normally would. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I really like them in coterie. I think they have a lot of uses. I even like maybe putting a unit in deep strike and just rapid ingressing in somewhere and sticking an objective that my opponent didn't think about getting, and it's like, "Oh, well now I can't shoot that unit off. It's sticky." You know what I mean? So it's they have a lot of cool things they can do. I haven't tried them in other detachments, but I want to because I think even though they don't have the sticky, potentially they could be really good in things like Yonari, or for a CP they can make it a an objective sticky or something like that. But I'm not positive on it.
Yeah, I've tried them.
You know,
I've tried them in a couple. The hard part is that when they lose that, like, I feel like 25% of their value is the sticky.
right?
And so there's definitely a little bit of a loss there. But what I have done in a couple of lists is I've ran one of them and used it as my I'm going to run out and get on the midpoint, like to start the game, like to get the trade engine going, um, as like an upgraded ranger. So I've
Hmm.
tried that in a couple of games. I don't hate it. I'm not also in love with it.
Right. That makes sense. Interesting. Well, you mentioned earlier that you think Eldar are a lot stronger than a lot of people give them credit for, even now, after being nerfed so
Hmm.
many times. What do you think about their, current meta, quote unquote, position? And do you have any advice for newer players out there that are just starting to pick up Eldar and they're like, man, this. I chose a bad time to pick up Eldar. Do
Well,
you have some
so
words of advice for them?
first and foremost, I firmly believe the best time to start an army is when it's quote unquote just nuked into oblivion. So, like one of our main shows we do, we call it Meta Monday. Every Monday we break down the tournament results of the weekend. Eldari for like, God, it feels like 2 months have been the lowest win rate faction. So if you're struggling, it's not you, like it's everybody. So first, think about that. Second, the reason I think it's the best time to pick up an army is because A, none of your friends are going to give you grief because you picked up the weak army. Okay, so you weren't meta chasing. But then the second thing is like This is not a joke. People will rage sell units. The best time to
Absolutely.
buy
Yep.
stuff is when it is junk. My buddy plays orcs. I swear he owns every speed freak model that you could possibly want. He's never played them, but he's like, eventually they're going to be good. Like there is something to be said for like, buying units that are in the dumpster because like they're going to come back around again. And I think the hard part is like I wasn't a new player, and when I came to Eldari, I went, "Oh, Eldari blows stuff up." Like because my experience has been Eldari blow me up.
Yeah.
But Eldari just are playing a very different game right now. And like I put them in the same category as Tyranids. I have a friend that plays Tyranids, and I think Eldari and Tyranids both can play very good games because they can score second. Like you shouldn't have a game where you don't score 40 points in secondary. Like you just shouldn't. If you're paying attention, you should be fine. You should score 40 points of secondary. You should be able to just by holding your home point and one expansion point. Just think about that. You score 8 points for 4 turns. So if you're doing that, you should be scoring 70 to 80 points a game if you think of them as a scoring army and not a killing army. And I promise you, if you're scoring 75 plus points every game, and that's your sole focus, you're going to have a positive win loss record. And you're going to learn the fundamentals so that when we do get a buff, man, all of a sudden you're going to be cooking. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I mean, the eBay point's great, right? Everybody rage sells their army, and you could just get models for cheap. I recently got an Avatar of Cain for like, I think it was $58 and plus taxes, a little over $60 for a well built, put together Avatar of Cain that is now painted and I'm playing with every weekend. And he's
Yep.
awesome. Super fun. But yeah, 100%. The Eldar can score a ton of points in games, and you can guarantee almost always 40 points in secondaries because they're just so fast. And your opponent, you have all the tools in your list. If you build your list right, you'll have all the tools to score every single secondary pretty much whenever you draw them. And if you do draw a bunk secondary, you can always new orders it and get a new one. So I rarely come out of games with, less than 35 points unless I get tabled, which has happened.
Oh, it happens. Oh,
It
it
happens
happens.
sometimes. You're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Oops, tabled, you know. But that's the other point about the Eldar is that you have to know your own army, but you also have to know what your opponent can do. So it's one of those armies that you have to really study, and even just talking to somebody before a game, what are your stratagems and so forth. But, if you're preparing for an event, you really have to do your homework and learn, the popular detachments, what the stratagems are, what to watch out for, things like that, and play accordingly. Because if you don't, you will get surprised. And the Eldar player can get just as surprised as the other players playing against you sometimes. And, you don't have the durability to afford getting surprised. So you have to play around that as well. So that's really interesting. Um,
Yep.
I think the
I
Eldar are still
completely
pretty good.
agree with you.
Yeah, and I think the Eldar are still pretty good. Now, having said that, obviously there have been some big hits. So,
Hmm.
what was your reaction to the last balance status, or I guess the balance data slate before the last? Because this one was a little bit of a nothing burger, to be honest.
Yeah.
And and how do you think they could have addressed the issue of the Eldar at the time better while still kind of fixing the issues that the Eldar had during that time period.
So I'll start with saying like I'm not like a Games Workshop fanboy or anything, but this is the most balanced the game has ever been. So before people don't go on Reddit because you're going to go on Reddit and people are going to rage, but this is the best balance the game has ever been, and I've been playing a while. That being said, the one thing that I wish they would stop doing is when people cry about things, reacting to the tiers and not the data. So here's what I mean. The problem with Fugan and the Fire Dragons was not Fugan and the Fire Dragons. Problem was when he was uninteractable, it felt bad. And when things feel bad, typically GW's response is, well, we're just going to take it out of the game. You know, do I think Fire and Fade, as it was before, where you could get into a transport, was the right way to do it? I can say, as someone who got Fire and Faded on, you know, for a year, it did suck and it wasn't fun. But at the same time, you're talking about like a 300 point brick that is made of paper and hopes and dreams. So, like, I think, I think the appropriate, I think to answer your question, I think that the nerfs were too hard. Um, I mean, it's clear by how they're winning right now, and a lot of that's also due to faction abandonment. But I wish when GW would make a decision. They've done this with multiple armies now, unless you're Necrons or Ultramarines, apparently, where when you have models that are undercosted and rules that might be a little too powerful, instead of going, okay, well, we're going to fix both at the same time, which is probably going to cause that faction to plummet, which is what happened with us when they said, okay, we're going to give you a points hike and then we're going to change your rules. Oh, but wait, we're going to also change star engines. Like when they're like, we're going to change multiple rules and we're going to change multiple points. It's too much at one time, and it's kind of like when you were in the ninth grade and you were in biology class and you learned about a control variable. If you change everything at the same time, you don't know what is or isn't working. Same concept applies here, guys. Like, to me, the thing they should have done was, okay, nobody likes the ability for them to be able to shoot you with, whatever it was, 12 Melta rifles and then get back into a car. Okay, I can understand that. So if we're going to change that so that that can't happen anymore, that's totally fine. But then we don't need to nerf the points on Fugan and Fire Dragons, because right now they're pointed as if they can shoot and get back into the car. And
Right.
because they can't, they're unplayable. So the the play would have been to say, either A, we're going to leave the rules as they are. I want them to be tricksy elves, so we're going to raise their points. Or, hey, we want them to be a little less tricksy. Okay, we're going to change the rules, but we're going to leave the points alone, and then let's address in 3 months. Because if you nerf rules, it's going to affect win rates, which would bring it down. And I honestly think if they would have literally just said, hey, you can't shoot and get back in a car, and didn't touch points, I actually think Eldar would be in a good, like, in a really good place. Like, they would still be winning. They wouldn't be the best army in the game, but they'd be a very, very, like, 52% win rate army.
Yeah, I think with another couple, I keep going back to this myself, but just give me one or two more units, man, and we're cooking. I don't need the fire dragon brick. You know what I mean? And weirdly enough, when the codex came out, I ran the fire dragon brick once, and actually, in one of my older videos, I actually thought to myself, "This is too expensive. This is 500
It's
points for
so
my army."
expensive.
Even back then,
So,
So really, if you look at the pattern of how the Eldar developed competitively, the Fire Dragon brick was really only a countermeasure to the rise of Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, which were everywhere at a certain point when they got buffed.
mhm.
And now, of course, we're seeing the rise in Catan, and it's no surprise that now that Eldar don't have a solid tool at dealing with Catan easily, that the win rate has plummeted now, right? So you're seeing it's like, oh, I can't just throw the hammer at them and kill them like I have in the past. I have to think of different creative ways to deal with them, and it's just not working.
But see, I think what you just said there though is the hidden tech. Like I love the Catan matchup now. Um, we don't have the I win button of, okay, we're going to let the red guys get out of the red car and whatever is 17.9 inches or less is dead. Okay. But what about this? Okay. You just put your big 16 wound model out on the midpoint. Okay, cool. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flame it with Lycus. So now I'm critting on fives and probably do like, I don't know, 2 damage, 3 damage. Then the Swooping Hawks are going to fly by. They're going to do like 2, 3 damage. Then they're going to shoot you with lethals on fives. And the Warwalker is going to have shot you also. So now they're going to have everything's going to be pushed into your 4-up invuln. They're going to probably do so now between Lycus' unit flaming it, Swooping Hawks flying by and shooting it, a Warwalker shooting it, you're going to very easily do like 8, 9 damage to that bad boy. And you then if you say, okay, now I'm actually going to fire something heavier, like a fire prism or something, it's very real that it's dead. And the only thing that's theoretically out in the open is one, 95-point swooping hawk unit. So, I think we can deal with them. The problem where people are really struggling is you don't just have this one unit that just walks over there and goes, you don't get to do the thing where we've all done this before. You look at your opponent and go, do you want me to roll the dice? And they go, no, you don't need to roll the dice.
Right.
We don't have that anymore. Like we have to go, okay, a Warwalker is going to shoot, probably do nothing. Okay, then Lycus is going to shoot, and they're going to do 3 damage. Then they're gonna throw a grenade first, do 2 damage. They're gonna shoot you, do 3 damage. Swooping Hawks are gonna fly by, do 3 damage. Then they're gonna shoot you, do another 3 damage. You're gonna just chip, 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 and then it's dead.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, there's definitely ways to bring down those models. I think where people get a little frustrated is when they get to that fire prism and they're like, okay, 2 wounds, let's see it, and then they just roll 2 4-up invuls. It's like, okay, fuck. you know. But I definitely get your point that there's other ways to deal with them, especially swooping hawks. I find incredibly useful because they don't, as long as you're reducing their 3-up save to a 4-up, they have to take a ton of saves, and at that point, it usually averages out a little bit better for you, the 4-up invul, and you're able to chip more wounds off of the model. And I'll also say this: I mean, I've had fire dragons shoot at a Catan and not kill it, so you know that's also
Mm-hmm.
possible too in this current meta.
I had a game in right after the Nightbringer came out. I played Sisters into him. I had I had Retributors and Morgan Vol full A into a Nightbringer. So you got to keep in mind that's eight. That's 14 multi meltas. Another like 5 grenades, which are all strength 9 -3 stuff. So it was almost, I think it was like 17, shots that were more or less re-rolling and all the goodies. And he just banged all the 4-ups, and you're just like, well, such is life.
Yep, because there's nothing you can do about
Yep, it
that.
is what it is.
That's Warhammer, as I like to say. Because I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, like, do dice rolls still matter in the game? 100%, absolutely. Like, it's part of it's an integral part of the game. You can minimize it, but then someone could still roll like 9 4-ups. It's possible. I've
Mhm.
done it. Everybody's done it. Does it happen often? No, and you shouldn't expect it. But when it does happen, you can definitely say that the dice gods are on your side, and it did actually, as a matter of fact, affect the game. Not every army plays that kind of game, but there are armies that do, and Necrons do it super well right now. And they have a lot of stuff that does it very well, not just Catan, but even before the Catan got buffed, they had 4-up invul bricks that you just had to, slog through. So there, it's nothing new. We just have to find a new way of, dealing with these strategies and tactics. And I think one of the things we can rely on against Necrons is their army, the number of units that they bring is incredibly small because it's all support models that are supporting the big stuff, and then it's the big stuff. So if you can whittle down the support, find a way to get around them, the game becomes a lot harder for them. You know, if
Oh,
you just
100%.
try to shoot them or charge into them blindly, they're going to win because that's the kind of game they like to play. You're feeding into their strengths. So I think Eldar players just need to kind of think about ways to move better. And once they figure that out, oh hey, I can move here, and your big warrior brick that is stretched across two objectives is now going to have to choose what they do. Are they going to remain on the objectives, or are they going to give you an objective? You know what I mean? And you can still score your points. In the meantime, you're scoring, racking up all these secondary points, and the Necron player maybe has to discard a couple secondaries throughout the game. I don't think they really have anything, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have anything like Eldrad, which just gives them a CP, do they?
No, not off the top of my head. I think they might have if I think they have one model that like it's situational. If something happens, they get a point. And I don't remember if it's a leadership test or if they killed something or they have one that if something happens, they get a CP, but it's not just an auto. It's not like an Eldrad or an Azrael or a Calgar where you just get one.
Right. Yeah, so they're not going to be able to just new order every single turn willy nilly and just max the
Correct. They're
secondaries.
not Ultramarines where they just have a trillion of them.
Yeah. Yeah, Ultramarines are also funny because they're one of those instances where you can definitely tell there's a little bit GW favoritism, especially recently. But, same kind of thing with them. They have these really durable bricks and these really damaging tanks that can just, fry anything they hit down a line of sight lane. But at the same time, they're not incredibly mobile, you know? They have a lot of reactive type moves, but reactive moves can be controlled with Eldar. Like warp spiders are great at doing this. If you want to prevent a unit from being able to reactive move, you just have to move behind them or move in the direction to block their reactive move. So when they do reactive move, they can't just go into you. They can't just go back behind the wall. They have to sit there, you know? So if you need to score an objective with warp spiders or something like that, you can, jump behind them and say, hey, I need area denial this turn, and I'm going to kill that unit now because it can't just hide behind the wall when I move up to the objective, or it can't just surge into me willy nilly. I'm going to, choose the order of activation in which I shoot things, make it a little bit harder for you to do something like that. So we do have the tools. It's just a little trickier to pull off than just frying something with fire dragons, which,
it,
you
you
know,
got to layer it. You got to
yeah,
layer it, because to your point, like if Calgar and six Vitrix just walk onto the middle point and hold it, before it'd be like, okay, Fugin's going to delete your whole face.
right,
We don't have a single unit that's going to do that now, but we have a lot of units that when paired together can absolutely do it, So I played Ultramarines this weekend and we were still playing he was still playing the old rules, so he had Gravgar, so he had the with the 3-man, so he had 5 instead of 6. That's why it's a weird number. But they walked out and I was like, okay. I was like, just so you know, I can pick them up very easily in one activation. He was like, how? And I was like, I was like, there's a lot of different ways I could, but I just don't want you to be shocked because da da da. And he was like, okay, whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And then I was like, all right. And where you've got to learn to layer is I had Lycus go 11 point something inches away from that brick. I put all 5 of the flamers into the stuff that was on his home point. I put Lycus into the Gravgar so I could crit on 5s. And I had Azerman and 10 Dire Avengers that were all standing in front. So that's 46 shots with sustained hits, critting on 5s, re-rolling 1s. Like they're gone. Like it's they we can do it, but you have to know, okay, this is the order that I'm going to do this in. I've got to do this to make this unit better, and I've got to do this to make this unit better. And so that's where you just have to we can't play lazy anymore. We have to play smart. But if we play smart, we can play You can play really well. I played into guard, and he had a big 25 man brick, and I was like, okay, cool. I sent Lycus and 5 warp spiders and another 5 warp spiders on turn 1. I went second after his 25 man brick that was on his expansion and killed 24 of them. And he was like, what in the world? Because flame, and then Lycus's unit charges, but you had to position Lycus's unit to be on the point. If you do it correctly, you can really, really get it. So that's where you have to use your units together. The thing that I think is tough for newer players with Eldar right now is that they remind me a lot of Sisters of Battle. Like, if you do stuff out of order, it goes bad real fast. Like with Sisters, if you don't shoot them with the immolator to strip cover before you shoot them with the next thing, because all their guns have -1, it's like, oh, it's -0. You're gonna have a lot of the same problems with Eldar if you don't shoot them with the Warwalker first, or you don't hit Lycus first. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think nowadays we're having to fall back on these kind of old style I call them ninth edition combos where you have, multiple units attacking one target and you're able to bring it down that way. Actually, that kind of works better anyway because it negates the effectiveness of things like, you know, Armor of Contempt, which is now nerfed to
Mm-hmm.
only affect one shooting activation, right? So I do like that a lot. I am painting up Boardwalkers as we speak because I definitely want to start incorporating them into lists with Dire Avengers, like you mentioned.
They're they're great.
Yeah.
They're great, man. Like, and the other thing too, you got to keep in mind when you think, like, one of the things I'm preaching a lot right now is counter meta, counter meta, counter meta. So think about Ultramarines. We're picking on them right now. They're running 3 Ballista Dreadnoughts typically and 1 Rep-X. Okay, all of their anti-infantry guns, and yes, the Ballista Dreadnoughts have like a little missile. They have their missile launcher pods, right?
Hmm.
But everything else is 24 inches, and all their big guns are 2 shots. 2 shots with the laser cannon, 1 shot with the last cannon, 2 shot with the last cannons on the Ballistreds. Okay, I don't care. Like, if you want to obliterate one elf, so be it.
Yep.
And where I don't think other people, like, fire prisms is something we haven't talked a ton about. Like, I think fire prisms are sensational right now for 2 reasons. One, they're only 150 points, and they're better than their data sheet looks like. Mainly because they've got the split profile. They have a great profile for shooting big things. They have a great profile for like elite models with 2d6 blast. I mean, that's beautiful. But they get targeted, and they're only 150 points, and they are not like, they're one of the few units in our army that doesn't have synergy really with the rest of it. Like, it doesn't need crit fives. It doesn't need an additional point of AP really. It doesn't need a lot of those things. And so if they want to kill it, so be it. I would much rather them kill that than something else. And it's like, I've used them like in that Chaos Space Marine game. I use it as bait. I kept throwing one out. Like, he killed one on turn 2, and I killed his Noise Marine unit, and I was like, I'll take that trade. Then on the next turn, he killed another one. I killed another Noise Marine unit, and by that point, he realized the Fire Prisms were not the threat. It was the rest of the army as a committee.
Right. Yeah, I think they work very well into armies without invul saves. I think they're fantastic. AP -4, potentially AP -5 with the Warwalker,
Mm-hmm.
which means that they're just punching through any armor in the game, you know? Um, where I think that people are a little bit apprehensive about them, but maybe shouldn't be as apprehensive, is against things with 4-up invuls, which fair enough. But, I mean, you could still present a threat because in your
They keep them
opponent's
honest,
mind,
man.
yeah, exactly. In your opponent's mind, he may fail those 4-up invuls, they're failable, man. That's how I feel when I'm running the Avatar of Cain. My opponent's probably like, oh God, he's just going to make all his invul saves. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to miss all my invul saves. So
Mhm.
it's a 50-50. It's a coin flip. So yeah, it puts your opponent in a position where he's like, do I really want to bet on a 50-50 in this scenario where I just put my guy out in the middle of the field? Probably not, you know? And I have 3 fire prisms waiting for you. What do you think the number of ideal fire prisms is for this meta? Three,
So
two? I'm
the
kind of
list.
well, anyway, go on. What were you gonna
No,
say?
you go. What do you got?
I was gonna say I think 2 is probably the optimal number, but I could be wrong on that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I could be wrong. I've been running 3 every time,
Mm-hmm.
every single time. Um, I here's my methodology on it. Right now, the big predators are guard, ultramarines, and necrons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and my thought process is that if I'm fighting necrons, they always underestimate our damage, and they're going to throw something super tough out on the midpoint. To your point, the dice are going to decide things to a point, but if on turn 1, and I've had this happen, I can put 6 fire prism shots into it, statistics would tell you that they're going like you're going to kill one, or they're going to spend a CP on a command point reroll, and to try to save. And even if I only do 6 damage to a shard and I get a CP out of them on turn 1, what has happened in the Necron matchup is, to your point, I have their undivided attention now that these fire prisms are a real threat. Now, what they're not thinking about most of the time is they're not going to have 3 of them shooting at the same target every turn. But then it causes them to laser focus in on killing my prisms, which lets me score at will for secondaries, and I love that.
Oh
In
yeah.
the Ultramarine matchup, they typically are running 1 to 2 rep X's, and ballista dreadnoughts are like they're they don't scare me at all. Like, they have a 2 base save. Okay, cool. Don't care. I want to kill the rep X, or I want to double team. And what I've found is that there is a real value in being able to go, okay, yeah, I've got a sight line on whatever the rep X with this one tank. I'm going to move my other 2 where he still cannot shoot them, and now I'm going to fire 4 shots out of this one prism, and I'm only exposing the one. And because you're only firing 1 shot out of each of those, keep in mind that one, you'll get the reroll to hit and the reroll to wound. So you fundamentally are rolling, like on the first set, you get one of the 2 that you can reroll. And then on each of the others, it's basically full rerolls to hit and wound with each of those shots.
Mm-hmm.
You consistently will do 12, just straight up do 12 damage to a rep X out of those 4 shots, because they're going to have cover, because everything in the game has cover, and they'll pop AOC on one of them, which, what I find it boils down to is you typically will get 2 through and you'll do 12 damage. That thing's going to have 4 health left. So now it's +1 to hit because it's wounded, right? And it's on death's doorstep. A grenade, a swooping hawk, something like that can easily pop it. And you've only exposed that 150 point unit. So like I really like the 3, because then the last real matchup with guard is, again, another tank that doesn't have a save. Their Rogel is out there. Rogel is terrifying at 23 inches. I am not scared of that thing at 50 inches, at 45. Like, all it's got is a suppressor cannon. Okay, cool story. Here's what's going to happen. They will put 2 out to bully you. You bring 1 fire prism out. You fire all your shots into one Rogel. Best case scenario, you blow it up, and that is like chef's kiss. Worst case, you do 12 damage. Well, when it fires back into you, that one oppressor statistically will not kill you. Cool story. He shot you. You just fade that one unit, which was the only thing he could see, back behind cover. And next turn, you walk back out to do it again.
Yeah, because
And
it's
so
gonna take two of them, right? It's gonna take two
it it
ruggles to
it
actually
will
bring
take
one down.
two, and I'll tell them every time, if you don't kill it, I'm gonna fire. I'm gonna fade back because you shot me and I survived. And so like there's to me the reason I like three is because in the Necron matchup I need six to shoot into that Catan, but in the Repex or the Rogel matchup I want to expose one tank and fire four beams into that thing, because when you get hot and you blow one up early, it's the game becomes very, very easy for you. But even when you just wound one and then he wounds you back, they're not used to somebody being able to have a fair, quote unquote, fair fight with them at that kind of range. And again, now the guard player will laser focus on your tanks, and that's not what they should be focusing on.
Right. So you're kind of playing the mind game of, if you don't deal with these things, they're going to continually chip at your vehicles, but at the same time, those aren't even the real threat. You know, it's
The other
the
thing
Dire
too,
Avengers, I mean, do you run Howling Banshees in your Eldar list with Jane, or?
I do. I run five. The other thing I was just going to say though is that their 2d6 blast shot, it's also good into their Bulgrim. So like
Mm,
it goes well because if I remember right, Bulgrim are six strength or six toughness, and it's six strength. So it's good volume fire. If they decide to put six Bulgrim out on the midpoint, it's like, okay, cool story. I'm going to fire 2d6, plus one, and then the next one's going to fire 2d6, and then the next one's, and like you can do good there. But yeah, I run Miss Redhead herself and five Howling Banshees. I'm 50-50 depending on the board layout and the opponent. 50% of the time I start them on the board. 50% of the time I'll put them in reserve for like a rapid heroic threat.
hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you have a Zerman, or I like to call him Ass Man, and 10 Dire
Mm-hmm.
Avengers. Do you run them with a Wave Serpent or no Wave Serpent?
Yep, I 100% run them with a wave serpent. So what I will do in most games, just depending on the layout, what I've been running recently is I send it straight at my opponent's expansion objective, because what I've found is that even if I'm playing, like, we'll use guard as an example because they're super popular. If they put a 25-man brick, which is maybe one of the hardest things to remove, especially if they have the Ogren bodyguard,
Hmm.
what I've found is that that thing, if you give the wave serpent +2 to move, so it's going 16, you're disembarking three, they're going 19. You are typically now going to be like, you're in range to get the half range bonus so that you get the sus one,
Hmm.
because if they're on the point, and their volume fire into whatever they've put on that expansion point is going to be devastating. It's going to be bad. And what I do a lot of the time is I will send that with one warp spider there, and I'll shoot all of the Dire Avengers first, so that I make sure I get the half range benefit, and then the warp spiders will flame, and I'll have them on the point, actually on the point, flame, and then have all of the obviously the Dire Avengers get back in the car after they shoot, with Azerman's ability. But now I've got I'm typically unlucky with my flicker jumps. I've got four or three dudes left standing on that point,
Hmm.
and if there's anything left alive, I put the, oh yeah, just so you know, there's four flamethrowers here. So when you come to move back onto this point, I'm going to overwatch you. And at that point, when you hit them that hard, that fast, most players completely throws their game plan off, and they are they're no longer thinking in a 1 2 3 mode of like, this is what I'm going to do. Now they're completely scrambling because they're like, oh shit, what am I going to have on my expansion point? How am I going to hold this thing? Like, even if I survive the Overwatch and kill these spiders. Like, these dudes are going to get back out of the car on the next turn. They're going to do the same thing again. And if he shoots your wave serpent, don't forget about the +1 to wound thing, because there's almost nothing in the game that should wound your wave serpent on less than a 4. Fade that mother trucker, save 1 point, fade that mother trucker to try to like make it to where the next thing can't shoot it. Um, if it's like a big vehicle and you do the same thing again on the next turn, and I'm just denying them that point. And I've found that that's really, really valuable, because I think we have a hard time fighting them for the midpoint right now because we don't quite hit hard enough. We have to do it with committee. And so most games, I'm like, I'm not contesting the mid a ton. I contest their expansion. And I'm gonna hold my home, I'm gonna hold my expansion, and we're gonna fight and flirt over the mid, but I'm gonna do my best to make sure I deny him his expansion 1 or 2 turns. And that typically gets people out of their rhythm enough where even a good player's like, all right, I gotta change my plan, blah, 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 blah.
Right. I think Eldar players have gotten into the mindset, especially recently, that wave serpents are a defensive tool. There's something to kind of hide behind a ruin footprint. Your guys come out, shoot, go back in all game, rinse and repeat. But in reality, it can be used aggressively. It does have the speed for it with the um, swift as the wind in any detachment really, and it could be used much more aggressively, especially with the Zerman, because he has that 6-inch move that he could just get back in, right? So it causes your opponent a lot of issues. Um, this is how I used to run Wave Serpents, which was more aggressive. You wanted to get your Wave Serpent up the field quickly and disembark and shoot something and kill something, and then basically provide a hard target for your opponent to have to deal with afterward. So yeah, that's really interesting. It also baits hard targets out into the open, so it kind of feeds into your fire prism strategy that you were talking about earlier, where you have, you know, fire prisms just one poking out, shooting 4 shots downrange, and then saying, hey, what do you want to deal with now? The rest of the wave serpent, or these fire prisms that will kill you, if you just sit there. So
Think I'm also a little bit of a weird player.
mm-hmm,
Because I've played multiple armies, what I typically try to do is I try to take the tactic that I love the most about any army that I've played and then go, okay, how can I Frankenstein monster that into this? And like, I try that Dark Angel tactic of like, I want to give you a bad choice. Like, if I put, and I'm not saying it's cheap, so don't get it twisted. I understand that Dire Avengers are 150, Azure is 135, so now you're talking 280, and then you add in a Wave Serpent, you're at 400 points. So you're sending 400 points over there. So I totally get it's 20% of your army. I don't care. It's They're going to go 16, disembark 3 is 19, and then I just got to be within 8. So that means as long as you're shooting at something that is within 27 inches of wherever you're starting that wave serpent, you're good, man. You're giving them a really bad choice because they're going to shoot and then they're going to get back in. So they want something anti-infantry to deal with the Dire Avengers, but they're sitting inside of a fundamentally what's basically the equivalent of like a T-15 transport, because everything's got -1 to wound against it, right?
mm-hmm,
So like if they send anti-armor over there, it probably doesn't have the guns to deal with what's coming out of it. But if they send anti-infantry over there, it doesn't have that. So now they got to potentially commit more because they've also lost what was going on there. So I'm trying to give them a really hard choice of what to deal with. And so going hand in hand with them, I put my rangers on that side of the board. If I can drop first, I drop first 100 out of 100% of the time. I want to control the flow of the game, and I'm putting my rangers on their expansion side, because like one of my tips that I give people, like I put in our tournament video, is if you're going to go play, if me and you were going to play,
mm-hmm,
I'm not worried about tactics because it's one game. Like I'm going to be fresh, we can play, and da 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 da. When you're going to go play 3 games of Warhammer and you've never done that before, by the time you get to game 3, you're going to be foggy and fuzzy. your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife's going to be texting you and nagging you. Like a million things are going to be going on. If you're trying to have these like 4D chess game plans, I promise you, shit is not going to work. Maybe you're a whole lot smarter than me, and it will, but I don't think it will. By day two, it sure as hell isn't going to work because now you're physically tired, your voice is going, and you're actually like mentally tired. So when I'm playing, I will predetermine, okay, unless something really crazy happens, this wave serpent Azerman and these guys are flying up this side to do this. Don't care. I'm playing my game. This is what we're doing. And what I found is when you do that, when you're tired and they try to throw you a curveball, you're like, I don't care. I'm still doing this. And it helps push through where you would normally make those mistakes.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense. Yeah, because I mean, you could try to be super complicated, and I've met Eldar players who are really they try to go above and beyond the complexity level of a normal game. Like
Uh-huh.
weird stuff. Like, what if I run a Viper and I do 3 squads of 2 Vipers and I do this and I do, and it's like,
Cool.
damn, okay, yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, but like you said, is it going to be viable to do some crazy shit like that in a 5 round GT where you're just like, oh god, you just misposition your Viper by like a couple inches and it's like, you know,
Or what happens when you get an opponent that like because here's the other thing. If you're gonna go play at your first like GT or RT, you're going to play armies like you said earlier. You don't know what they do.
yep,
And again, unless you're way smarter than me, this is what's going to happen in every game you got up to. Someone's going to go, let me tell you my rules. Wah 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 wah. As they give you like a 5 minute dissertation about every stat and rule that you're not going to remember by the time you walk back to your side of the table.
yep,
So literally, you just need to go, hey, is this unit good at killing infantry or vehicles? Okay, cool. Melee or shooting? Okay, cool. Do you have reactive moves? Okay, cool.
yep.
Like you're asking some of these basic questions, and then you go, okay, I'm going to play my game plan to the best of my ability. And the experience comes in when you get more reps. Like the first time I played Chaos Demons, I got the floor mopped with me because I was like, oh my God, what do I do against all these big stompy monsters? I was just intimidated by the army. And I was a better player than that guy. I had a better list than that. And I countered him hard. But I was like, when I started just going like, meh, it completely changed. And I think we have to kind of have that mindset of like, I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I
Right.
know I need to shoot with Lycus before I shoot with my swooping hawks, or my war walker before I shoot with my swooping hawks. Like you got to know those things. But other than that, man, you gotta figure out what your plan is and then attack it.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah, I think human beings in general have a tendency to overcomplicate or second guess themselves on certain things. So if you just don't do that and go with your first instinct, I think a lot of times you'll be more in line with what's actually correct than not. As a teacher, I see this all the time. So for the record, I teach adults. So when students come into my class, they're usually students who have, who want to get their education later in life, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I get this at least once a week. My first choice was A, but it's actually, but I changed it, and A is correct." It's like, yeah, that's right, because you instinctually thought that that was the right move at the beginning, and people should go with their instincts more often than not. Ask questions during the actual game, because yeah, like you said, you're not going to remember anything, all their stratagems and stuff. So asking somebody something as simple as, if I do this, what can you do? Is a
Mhm.
much better line of questioning than, tell me your whole army special rules, all of it. Tell me everything can do. You're never going to remember all that. You're setting yourself up for failure. Usually when
Bro,
I
I
play somebody, I just say, let's play and learn as we go. And then I just
yep.
ask, can you do something if I move here, and play your army's game plan exactly like you were saying? And if
Dude,
they say
dude, I've
yes,
started
then you can
telling
change
people to
things.
stop telling me. Like we'll get to the game and if it's a rare incursion where it's a detachment or something I don't know, they're like, "Do you know this one?" I go, "Nope." They're like, and I go, "Save it. You're gonna tell me, and I'm gonna forget everything you say." And so I will habitually, I'll put my hand on a model and I'll go, before I can move it, I'll point to anything that I think could be an Overwatch threat, and I'll go, "Overwatch threat?" And if they're like, "Yes," I'm like, then in that moment before I move the model, I'm like, "Okay, tell me what its guns are." Because in that moment, I can then make that decision.
Right.
Okay, so no Overwatch. Anything have reactive moves? Okay, okay, cool. And like, I'll just ask those questions as I do stuff. And then on the flip side, you got to do the same thing for other people because not everybody will do that. So like I will remind people, "Hey, just so you know, if you shoot me and I live, I get to move D6 plus 1." "Oh, okay, okay, okay." Or,
Yep.
"Hey, just so I know you just moved these flame guys right here. I do have the ability to make one of my units where it can't be overwatched." "Oh, is that a stratagem?" "Nope, it's one of my army rule things, it's this token." And like, so that's where like I really want to stress that like the community is actually really, really cool. And like a lot of people are like, "Well, it just doesn't sound like it's very competitive." No, it's very competitive, but there's just too many rules for you to remember all of them. And nobody like the only times I've ever had bad interactions with people was when they straight up gotcha'd me.
Right.
Like, and for those people who don't know what a gotcha is, I'll give you an example. First time I ever played Custodes, I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was a super tight game and I was winning. And I charged into, he had two grav tanks and they were like some of the only things left. And I literally said out loud, which is a thing in this game, it's called playing by intent. I said, "Okay, I'm going to charge my sacrosaints I'm going to declare a dual charge because I want to lock them down so that you can't get to the midpoint and score on the bottom of 5, or you'll have to roll a desperate escape because your fallback would be to go through me." And he just goes, "Okay." I had no idea his tanks had fly. A good player, and I had said I'd never played his army before. A good player would have said, "Okay, you can do that, but just so you know, both of these tanks have fly, so I'm just gonna fall back and fly over them." And then what I would have done instead was I would have tried to body block to the because I only had like 3 units. I would have tried to body block, him from like landing on the point, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
or just tried to see if I could keep like do something else. But I did it. And then he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna fall back." And I was like, "You gotta do it." And he goes, "They fly." And I was like, "Why wouldn't you have told me that? Like I didn't know that." And he flew back over and he won the game. And if he had told me, I would have blocked the point. And he still and I there was a different way I could have stopped him from getting onto the mid, but it was a gotcha moment for me. And I'll tell you what, I never forgot that those things could fly after that. But like, that's not how you want to win a game. Like, the best tournament run I've ever had in my entire career was at the Lone Star Open. I was 5-0 going into the last round, and I lost the last game because I told the other player I was honest. He moved his unit onto the mid. He was exactly 7 inches away, and I had a 6 in my miracle dice pool. And I said, "Hey, just so you know, on my turn, I can guarantee that I can make that charge." And he went, "What?" And I said, "I can use a 6, which would mean the minimum charge that I would have is a 7." And so he had 1 more inch of movement. He moved to be 8 inches away, and I rolled it, and I rolled a 1. I command point re-rolled, failed the charge a second time on my turn. I wasn't able to get onto the midpoint and flip it, and I lost the game. But that's how like I wouldn't have felt good about winning if I had done something cheeky that he didn't know. And that's where that player intent really comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That is very honest of you because I've played and know a lot of players who would not have said anything, even in a casual game. So that's good on you for doing that. But yeah, it's I think nowadays, and in this, I guess the interview is going full circle now, because back in the day when I started playing, competitive play was really well gate kept by older people that were, you know, good at the game, but also, they were a tight community who whatever you could get away with, you got away with.
Hmm.
There was no intent. There was, well, if you're not in range, you're not in range. There's no pre-measuring either. Talking about like fourth edition, and the first time
Hmm.
we ever got pre-measuring was in fifth edition, and even back then it was like, you wouldn't expect to hear people's special rules or what they could do or what weapons they had. So way different than nowadays. And I remember the first events I started to go to in high school. I was thoroughly surprised by the level of dishonesty that was leveraged at me. And, keep in mind, these are, older men going against somebody who's in high school. So when you tell them everything you have and you hand them back then it was just a piece of paper with your list on it. And they looked at it and said, "You know what? I have no obligation to show you what's in my list." That's when you kind of learned, like, oh, okay. That's where the reputation, by the way,
Yeah.
of these kind of players comes into play. It's from back in the day when a lot of us as youths who are now, older, faced this kind of thing and we're like, man, this sucks. Like, how could we, have a good experience here? But I think you and other players in the community nowadays are actually like kind of leading this charge to have a better game, a better
Dude,
experience in 40K. So that's great.
I'm I'm teaching my 9-year-old right now because I got inspired at the US Open last year when there was a kid that was 12. He was 12 years old and he was playing. And like you can have a blast. My my one of my opponents at the Lone Star Open, our first one, we we walk up to the table. He's playing Black Templar, and I go, "Hey man, let's have some fun." I was like, "How well do you know my army?" And he was like, "I have no idea. This is my first game of Warhammer ever." I went, "This is your first game of Warhammer ever?" And he was like, "Yep." And I was like, "Brother, we are gonna have so much fun." And we spent the full 3 hours, and it was teaching him how to play. Like that's the kind of community that I think we are very quickly moving to.
Absolutely, 100%. I've seen that myself, uh, kind of increase over the years as well. So that's really cool because that's the kind of community we want to be in. And I dare say, honestly, that that's the kind of culture that people are cultivating, not only in Warhammer 40K but in other things as well. Because when I was a kid and I played sports, it was much different than what I see some of the sports in now. And I may be wrong on this, but when I used to play football, for example, there was a really toxic culture even when I was a child around being competitive and how you would treat other players and how you would play the game. And nowadays, I think that it's much different. It's a much more about positivity and like improvement than about like just beating somebody down with insults and things like that. So I think that's awesome. And honestly, about 4 years ago, when I started kind of playing more seriously again, I recognized it as well that the community has gotten a lot better from what I remember back in like, you know, even so far as sixth edition. I think maybe the change happened in, eighth edition when I was taking a break from the game. And then when I came back, it was just a much better community in general, which is really cool. So it's awesome to hear that. What are your plans going forward?
So kind of twofold. As far as like plans for me personally, I'm going to this year, I'm going to be playing in probably 4 or 5 different RTs over the course of the year, or I'm sorry, GTs. Like I'm going to play I played in the Dallas Open earlier this year. I'll play in the Lone Star Open. My opponent at the Dallas Open is actually the guy that's running the Alamo Bowl, which is going to be about a 200 person GT in later in the summer. So I may end up going down there and hanging out with him. He's a really cool dude. He's giving away Bowie knives for all the prizes, which is pretty
Oh,
neat.
that's
And
awesome. I've always
yeah,
wanted one of those.
I thought it was pretty cool. But as far as the channel, we're growing and it's great. My focus is on trying to help newer players understand how the game goes, or those players that are just kind of like plateaus. Like for me, you know, I I got to the place where I could go 3-2 at one of these things pretty quickly, and then it was like I just stopped right there, and it was like, man. And it took me a while to understand like how the seeding works at these things and how you might have a lower record, but play at higher tables is actually better. And so it took me a while to understand how it all worked. And so honestly, it's just trying to help people with that, and put that kind of information out so that people understand. And then, honestly, also picking other people's brains about like, hey, maybe you and I are both wrong, and maybe we shouldn't be running any fire prisms. Tell us why. Show us what are we missing. And so I just think that like the more information we can get out there, the more we can all learn.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one of the reasons why the YouTube community is so cool, because there's a lot of different ideas out there about what, you know, is high level competitive Warhammer 40K and what does it look like and so forth. So
Hmm.
it's pretty
Hmm.
cool. It's pretty cool. And I've met a lot of people doing YouTube myself that have just changed my mind completely from, when I started. I mean, when I started, it was ninth edition, early ninth edition. I started doing the YouTube thing. And at that time, you know, I had preconceived notions about the game because of the way I played in my local shop. We didn't play with competitive terrain formats. We just threw stuff on the table. So, you know, my ideas of, what's normal was totally different than others. And when people came to me and were like, "Hey, actually, I noticed the board you kind of have on this battle report that you did on the channel in, early ninth edition or whatever, doesn't really look like more competitive layouts. Like, like, could you do some stuff with more competitive layouts?" And I was like, "Oh, well, what does that look like? I don't even know what it looks like. Turns out a lot more ruins and less forests and things like that." So
Dude, hashtag bring Forest back in 11th edition. I
dude,
liked Forest.
seriously, I love forests, man. I recently did a video where I was like, man, I want more forests. And you could have the
Hmm.
same rules, you know,
Same rules.
it's obscuring terrain. You can't shoot through it. But, maybe if you're in it, you get a slightly different bonus than maybe standing behind a wall. Because there is an advantage to standing behind a wall, obviously, which is you can't be seen on the bottom story. But forest could have something different, which would be cool. Or maybe if you're, 2 inches back from the forest edge, you cannot be seen or whatever. There could be different rules for it, and it could
I'll
still be
also
cool.
say, dude, if you like to hobby, paint some terrain. If you've only ever played with like the MDF, which I'm not trying to be a hater on the MDF, but like if that's all you've ever played on, the game feels and is so much cooler when you have two fully painted armies with painted terrain. It like you will catch yourself taking. I played in a tournament in Oklahoma City. It was like 30-person tournament, and they had all this just ass kicking painted terrain. Dude, the amount of pictures that we were all taking in the middle of our game because Magnus was standing in front of these 5 Rangers, or, all of a sudden, these Howling Banshees were charging into inner circle. Like, it was like, oh, it looked so cool. So, not only bring back Forest, but like paint help your local game stores paint some terrain, man. It makes the game feel and look so much cooler.
I 100% agree with you. In every game I play, casual game at the shop, I always prioritize painted terrain over
Mm-hmm.
footprints every single time. It doesn't matter if there's, oh, it's not exactly like layout one or whatever. Well, it's close enough, whatever. It's painted. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
play with it. And who cares? No one, at the end of the day, if you're playing a pickup game, nobody cares. And it's one of the best ways to learn the fundamentals while having fun, So,
Amen.
yeah. So hopefully they bring some of that back and say, hey, there's new terrain types. We have these suggested layouts for you with forests and rubble and, all this kind of stuff. And we don't have to rely so much on, uh, rubber, squares and MDF ruins. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with it, but if that's all there is, it gets kind of boring quick, after a
Yeah.
while. So
Agreed.
much more cinematic. And if I'm going to an event that's with a lot of other players, I want a more cinematic experience. You know what I mean? So
100%.
yeah. So hopefully that happens. 11th edition is around the corner. What are your wishes? I guess I could say for 11th edition. What do you hope it brings?
Ooh, this is gonna be a really hot take that um I want war gear cost back. Um so here's my I think 10th edition is the best version of the game we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope that we get 10.5. I do not want them to completely change the game because it'll take another year to balance it back to the place it's at.
Right.
I hope that they take the 5 to 10 armies that have crap army rules and scrap them or upgrade them or something to make them relevant. The ones that are great, just leave them the hell alone and give us give us war gear cost, because when you have a squad that has the choice between, and I'll use easy terminology that everybody will understand, a bolter gun, a flamethrower, or a melt a gun, they're going to pick the melt a gun 100 out of 100 times. And the only way that they won't is if there's a different point cost. And so if a unit is 100 points right now and you have all three options, make it 80. And if you take the bolter versions, it's 80 points. And if you take the flamer versions, it's 90. And if you take the melter versions, it's 100. It will give more build diversity. It will change things. People won't just, on Rogaldorns, they won't just throw on the extra four plasmas because why not? They're free. Like it will change the way people play. And I think it will add even more customization. And as far as the army rules, I would like to see, this is the Sisters of Battle player talking here. I'd like to see less army rules that are based on RNG, because like Miracle Dice, which I think, Eldar had at the very beginning of the edition, are it is a cancer army rule either for you or for your opponent, because if it's turn one and I have three miracle dice and they're all sixes in my tray, you're going to feel like this is busted and I can't win and it's unfair. And on the flip side, if I have no miracle dice or they're all ones, I'm going to be like, oh, this is cool. I have no army rule. And, so like take the RNG out of army rules. I'm fine with like reactive moves being a D6, or whatever, but take it out of the army rules, because when one army gets to basically go, hey, I'm going to take lethal, sustained, or devastating moves, or another army goes, I'm going to have my whole army advance this turn or fall back this turn or whatever. And you're like, well, I'm going to roll two dice. And if they're a 4+, I get something. If not, I don't get anything. It can feel, it can feel kind of hard. Or like if you're Tyranids, hey, I'm going to make you take a fear test and it's not going to do anything. Like they just need to touch the RNG and the really weak army rules, and then cut out a lot of the bloat. Like we have like what, freaking 12 detachments and seven of them aren't playable. Take them out behind the wood chipper, put them down, and let's just give every army like 3 detachments, and if you just took all the detachments that every army has and kind of pull the best stratagems and the best stuff and smash them into 2 or 3, then every army might have 2 or 3 playable ones, and that would be a kick-ass way to start 11th,
Yeah,
in my
maybe
opinion.
make more detachments, or not more detachments, but detachments that are less unit specific as well. So
Mhm.
that I could, if I want to be faster, I have the fast detachment and tricky detachment. I have the, I want more firepower detachment. I have that. That way people can kind of cater their play style to a specific detachment instead of saying, oh, it looks like I'm going to have to run 30 Wind Riders
Yeah,
because,
man, the
you know,
keyword shit is so rough because it either it either go it either is amazing or it's horrible, because the problem with the keyword stuff, to your exact point, is if they say, okay, it has to be an aspect warrior, just as an example.
mm-hmm,
Okay, great. Well, when the aspect warrior is appointed appropriately, that detachment's bumping. But as soon as 2 or 3 of those aspect warriors take some points nerfs, well, that detachment's trash now because it only works on, aspect warriors. Like, if it just said infantry get to choose to reroll ones to hit or reroll ones to wound. Oh, okay. So this is an infantry detachment. Okay,
right,
cool. I can,
right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. This is a vehicle detachment. This is, and it applies to multiple different types of units so that, you could have better, more varied builds within a detachment, Because, I mean, it's a certain point, you can have as many detachments, but they're all going to look exactly the same. Like, Serpent's Brood is pretty much going to look the same. It's just going to have a bunch of Harlequins in it. That's it,
Mhm.
right? And then you have Aspect Host. It's going to have a bunch of Aspect Warriors in it with a couple of other things. That's it. And, so on and so forth. And you could pretty much do that for every single army all along the line. And the best detachments are those, I feel, that allow the most diversity, of builds, or, don't have locked in keywords for every single stratagem. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
what's
a
your
good wish
thoughts
list.
on war gear cost? Every time I bring it up, anybody that I talk to is always like, eh.
I played with war gear costs for many years. 10th edition is the first edition where we didn't have them. I truly don't know if war gear costs would actually promote a more diverse build set for a lot of armies, because I think that there's going to be something that you just always take with a squad, and maybe you don't take anything at all. And that's going to be the two choices. Let me give you an example. Back in, 5th edition, we had Imperial Guard, are a great example of this because they could take all the special weapons. You had
Okay.
the options of flamers, grenade launchers, sniper rifles, and melta guns and plasma guns for the special weapons. Nobody took anything except plasma, even though the flamers were cheaper and the grenade launchers were cheaper. No one would ever take anything else. Why? Because the plasma gun was the only thing that was going to kill 90% of the player base, which was Space Marines. Anything else wasn't doing anything. Now, I don't know if war gear costs in combination with balancing the weapon types and stuff like that. We obviously are in a different era of Warhammer 40K, so I could be mistaken, but what I had found from back then was that people will still just take the strongest thing, and there will always be a strongest thing, unfortunately, and that's kind of how it is, you know. Um, but it could be done well. I just don't know if a 5 or 10 point increase or decrease really affects the bottom line as far as what am I going to take this unit for? What is its purpose?
So let me give you a
And
question here on that,
mm-hmm,
because I agree with you, but here's where my question comes in. So your channel is all Eldar. So let's use an Eldar example. Okay,
mm-hmm,
warp spiders. Okay, so warp spiders are 105 right now.
yes,
So let me give you 2 examples. Example one, 105, and you can go with the optimal build, which is where you get the whatever it's called, the rifle and the weaver. Okay, so
mm-hmm,
you get the extra little super close range flamer. Okay, that's 105. Or for 95 points, you can take either the power blade array or the power blade and a weaver, or For 85 points, you can just take the Exarch spinner, which is fundamentally the same thing, just gives you an extra point of AP. The reason I say this is that I think, tell me if you differ, I have one Warp Spider unit that is almost solely its job is to move, block, and score points. If I could trim 20 points off of that and it just is less effective at killing, or even 10 points or 15 points, I would do it. 100%. Wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, and I think everybody would, which was kind of the point I was making is that you either take nothing or you take just the optimal,
Okay.
So there's really
Yes.
less options than you think. It's kind of like it's like a choose your own adventure book, but every
There's
path
only going to be
leads
two
through the
paths.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
you're
Exactly.
either going to do bare bones or you're going to do the biggest boom boom. Yeah,
Right.
I do agree with you that I think that those are going to be the majority of the time. They're going to be the option. I just think it'd be cool that like when the squad is all one weapon and it's just a leader that has options. It's like if that leader's options, maybe even if they're only 5 points,
Mhm.
it it could create some more build diversity because it's like, am I using this unit for killing or scoring, or you know what I
It
mean?
could definitely help when trying to fit something in your list. I definitely agree with
That
you there.
too.
Yeah. So I like it from that perspective. I actually think that it might be worth it to consider that every army gets a certain amount of upgrade points, and they could be just like, how like the old CP was in ninth edition where you had an
Hmm.
enhancement or whatever.
Yep.
Your army maybe gets 10 of them and you can place those on different things. Maybe you get some stuff for free. Maybe, you have to spend a war gear point to upgrade your Exarch's, regular death spinner to a dual death spinner or whatever, spinneret rifle and death weavers. And you have to choose where those upgrades go. Every army is not going to just be able to max out every single unit they have. They have to make choices, you know, which is another option. But yeah, we'll see what they do, you know. But
I don't think they'll do it. I think they have streamlined the game
yeah,
as much as humanly possible. I think anything that would potentially make it more complicated and make it more difficult for new players to come on is going to go away, because the only other
yeah.
super popular thing I hear all the time and I see on YouTube channels, which I'm just going to tell you, is somebody who is in corporate America, like there's not, this is a bad business decision, it's why they won't do it, is point cost by like detachment.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
I've heard a
Yeah.
million people go, oh my gosh, like this unit is busted in this detachment, but in all the other ones it's fine. I wish it would just get a points cost for that. They it takes them they have a full team working on the balance slate, and it's never perfect, and it can't be perfect. If all of a sudden they had to do it for every detachment, they would literally need 20 times the people that are currently, it's a bad business decision. um, because like it or not, they are a business first and a hobby and war game second, and they're not going to go, oh my gosh, we're going to do, like, it would just, yes, in a dream state it'd be amazing, it'll never happen though.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. Um, but yeah, I don't even think it would fix what
I don't
people
either.
are talking about. I mean, I think about it and I'm like, you know, usually the worst offenders of things that are OP are good in like multiple detachments. So it's like,
Hmm.
oh, there's very few instances where something gets nerfed and it's like only good in one detachment. Like for example, Wind Riders have never been touched since the Codex. They're really good in Wind Rider hosts. They're amazing. In other detachments, they're just whatever, maybe
Me,
even
yeah.
not that good. So that just doesn't happen. Whereas warp spiders are good in every single detachment that I've played, at least, and you sometimes even see them in things like Spirit Conclave and people's Wind Rider host builds. You see warp spiders because they're just so good, So I mean, yeah, they get the points nerf. That makes sense. So I think if anything, target What I think they do too much is I think they increase the points on too many things at once and don't just focus on, okay, what actually makes this thing OP? Is it the detachment rules? If it is, let's weaken the detachment rule or let's weaken a stratagem, but slightly so that it's not, you don't kill the thing. And I think one of the, I guess, again, coming full circle to something we've already talked about, but one of the problems with Skyborn Sanctuary as a stratagem now is it's almost worthless. I mean, it comes
Yeah.
up once in maybe 30 games where it's useful and it's like, oh, I didn't even intend for this to happen, but here we go. I'm going back in the transport with the stratagem. But it doesn't work. So you've killed it. You've effectively killed it, which is not good. So, you know, yeah, I think there's obviously improvements they could do, but I agree with your point earlier. It is the most balanced the game has ever been. I've been playing since third edition, and you know, it's it's much better than it used to be because it used to be like you just didn't play against certain armies or people because you knew that it was impossible to win and that it wasn't going to be fun. There was no point in setting up. My buddy, who played in a few events himself, had this Imperial Guard leaf blower, it was called. He was one of the first guys to do it in California, in our area at least. And we got the codex, and I remember we spent the weekend devising strategies for it. And of course, he came out, and I'll never forget this as a kid. Just nobody, he played one game and everybody complained about it in the shop. Everybody was watching him play, and it was the quickest game of 40k ever because he got first turn and he literally killed everything in his opponent's army except for a single unit behind like this building that he couldn't see. And it's only because he missed one of the indirect fire shots and it scattered off the board. So, I mean, it was really bad back then when new codexes would come out because they would just be absolutely busted. And I think when something is strong now, we're like, "Oh my god, that's busted." We're using the same terminology, but people don't have an
It,
idea of what busted actually is, you
yeah,
know?
it's not, I saw a short today that Scary did, and he was so right because he was like, before when your codex came out and it was bad, he was like, it was bad for the next 3 years.
Yeah, or
He goes,
longer in Dark
don't
Eldar's
talk to
case.
me about like FAQ in, in 3 months. He was like, it's bad until the next edition, and like I
Yeah.
literally just pulled up win rates for like, because I don't really consider the balanced data slate we just had one. So since January, there's only 3 armies that have higher than a 55% win rate. And the highest one, which is Necrons, obviously, which everybody's like, it's only 61,
Yeah.
which is high. But when the strong busted army is at a 61% win rate, and Eldari, which is actually the worst, has a 44% win rate, to me, what that tells me is the game is in a really, really good place. Because if the worst army in the game, and you take the entire player base, has a 44% chance, what that tells me is like, if you're a good player and you play that army, you probably have a 50-50 chance of at winning a game. And if you look at the best army and you go that, they're at a 60, we'll call it a 66 in round. Like, what that tells me is if you're a better than average player, you probably are going to go positive if you go to a tournament because you'll have more favorable matchups. But that's like, the majority of armies are all they're all between about 53 and 46%. Like, that's great.
Yeah. 100% agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Like the game is very balanced compared to even what it was in ninth edition. So that's a good step forward. As long as they continue to improve as a gaming company, I think things are only looking up, to be honest. Um and I can already tell just based on the games I've played versus games I played back then, what a difference it is in what I'm like, what the options are, like how many options you have as a player
Oh
in
gosh.
even in bad matchups, you still have more options than you did back in the day, you know, which is awesome. It's an awesome feeling. It means that even if you are in a hard matchup, you can still have a close game with somebody, even if you lose against them. And hey, you may lose the game because, they have a stronger army than you, but it's not going to be by a ton, you know? I mean, you lose a game by like 5 points, big deal. You know, you still played a good game, you still had fun. You know, again, I'm going to harken back to the old days again, but back then when you lost a game, it was like, oh God, I'm tabled in one turn. You know, that wasn't a good feeling, especially if you never got the chance to even roll an attack dice. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, it's so funny you say that because it's like I can think of all the last tournaments that I've gone to. I've had one layout, and by the way, Dawn of War needs to be put behind the wood chipper as well.
Yeah.
And it was like a Dawn of War board, and I matched up against Tau, and the guy literally goes, "I'm sorry," and I was like, "It's all good," but it's like the game is so balanced now that those are very, very, very rare occurrences.
They are. Yep. 100%. Yeah, Tao used to table people in one turn. I mean, that was the
Uh-huh.
reputation. A lot of people say, oh, it was because they had the move, shoot, move. No, it was because they would just table you and body you in a single turn if they got first turn, which
Yeah,
there
but Tau
was,
players don't
yeah.
have souls. Let's be honest.
they're soulless, dude. Dude,
Yeah, and now they have the
oh
twin
god.
lance.
Oh,
Don't talk to me about balance.
the
Don't
twin
talk to me about
lance.
balance. I played the twin lance
Oh,
this weekend, and I was like, "It can do what?" He was like, "Yeah, I can do this, and it can do this, and it can do this," and he just kept going, and I was like, "Jesus, does it just have all the rules?" And he was like, "Yeah," and then he told me its health profile and everything, and I went, "Ah."
you know what's crazy about that is when I compare it to units back in the day, I'm like, it's not even that bad, but
Oh
it's
yeah, no,
still
it's not.
bad. Yeah, I mean, it's bad for this meta because it's very strong in compared to what we have now. But yeah, the Twin Lance is insane. It feels like it's almost should be an Eldar model that's like 300 and something points. You know,
Well,
it's
here
so
was the
good.
funny part. We finished the game, and I go, "Hey, quick question." And he was like, "What's that?" And I go, "If it was 100 points more, you would still take it." And he goes, "100, yeah, 100 out of 100 times in every list I built." And I went, "Okay, just checking. I thought
Yeah,
so."
yeah. Yeah, they need to get rid of some of the rules, and I bet you they will. I mean, again, we'll
It's
see it
into the
happen.
edition.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see it happen. It'll change, and it'll suck. You know, I mean, usually that's what happens. You know, something is that overpowered. It's like the next edition or the next rule set. It's like, oh, it's not that good. It's like, um,
Or it's 400
yeah,
points.
yeah, or it's 400 points. Yeah, it's insanely costed, and then people are like, oh god, I just bought this for almost nothing. But it is what it is. You know, you buy it for the models. You don't chase the meta. It's not something that's even fun. Honestly, you get
Yeah,
burnt out chasing the meta. I knew a guy who was a very big tournament player in sixth edition. Always got the new army, um, and just got burned out within a couple years because he had almost every army at that point, but none of them were good. You
yeah.
know, because he had meta chased during that period of time, built them all up, got them quickly primed and painted, you know, and they looked awful as well. You know, not to insult the guy, but Jesus, you know, it was just like a matter of getting them painted within a couple days. And, you know, it's like, oh, he stopped playing and sold all his stuff because he didn't enjoy the game, you know, because it's
I
not
think I think
enjoyable when you
there's
get like that.
there's a lot of fun too though, like when you're like one of the things that I have had the most fun over the last couple months trying to figure out with Eldari is like when an army isn't just like, oh, there's this one build, and when you play it, it's really broken and really strong and really OP, then it actually like opens up some build diversity because like I know we're probably coming to the end of this, but one of the things I would strongly, 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 strongly recommend if you're a newer player, it's totally fine to find a list online and to try it and build it. But when you're ready to really play, make your own list. And what I mean by that is you could take someone else's list and then just change 200 points, but you need to understand how your list is going to function because I never, and now granted, I'm not like a world champion, but like I typically do pretty well at these things and I never take a meta list. And I can tell you Like, perfect example, when I went to the Texas Open, I played against Cam, the gentleman who won the entire event. As soon as we sat down, he goes, "Whoa, what do you have that? What? Okay." And like when someone has to go, "What is that? Why are you playing that? What does that do?" You have an element of surprise because they're not used to it. They haven't played, you know, if I go against a Necron player, I've played so many Necrons over the last 3 months. I could, I know their data sheets as well as they do. And so there's no surprise whatsoever. Every time like the rare time I play like a Death Watch or a Gene Stealer player, I'm like, Jesus, I don't know what any of your rules are because I play you guys like once every 2 years. Like there,
Yeah.
there's a real element to that. You know what I mean? So like the easiest example is, and I don't want to go down a giant rabbit hole, but like I, I haven't figured out how to make them work. I'm gonna start there, but I think Wraith Lords at 130 did some spicy tech, and people haven't seen them on the board in 3 years. So when all of a sudden you put out a unit that's got a 2 base save, 10 toughness, and it's got decent melee, decent shooting, and you get to pick something that you get to re-roll, like people start going like, wait a minute, what? What does that do? What is that? And it prompts some of those questions.
Right. Toughness 10, but I'm only strength 5. I need
Mm-hmm.
sixes to wound you. Yeah. Yeah, Wraith Lords can be pretty strong. I actually think they are the best part of Spirit Conclave. I think the problem isn't with the Wraith Lord. The Wraith Lord's great. The problem is with the other things in Spirit Conclave that you must take, which are Wraith Blades and
Yeah.
Wraith Guard, which are kind of poop, you know?
Yeah. They need
Yeah.
like, dude. Even with the points drop, I actually played multiple games, and I have some really cool kit bashed Wraith Guard that I'm very proud of. And I just tried to find an excuse. I played them like 3 games in a row, just trying to like force them into the list. And it's what people are getting mistook on is they're like, oh, they're only 150 points or 140 points now, or I think they're 150 now, and it's like, no, they're not, because you also have to have a psyker near them, or they're hitting on fours. So it's not just that; it's another 45 or 65 points for the person hiding behind a wall that you got to keep near them, so that they actually can like potentially do damage.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, I honestly think their data sheet's fixed if they natively, like, they're supposed to be like our Terminators. Let them natively hit on threes, and when they have a psyker near them, they hit on twos.
100%.
Instantly viable unit.
Yep.
Do
And
all
actually, they've always, in the history of Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades, they've always been able to hit on threes. I don't know what this recent thing is where they hit on fours. It doesn't make any sense. Now the leadership and OC makes sense,
totally their
but
construct. I'm fine
right,
with that.
yeah. But the weapon skill, ballista skill doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, dude, they're past warriors. They know how to fight. You know,
Yeah,
they're Eldar,
yeah.
man.
I
Yeah.
I think I think they're pointed perfectly if let them hit on threes, and when someone's near them, they hit on twos, and then tiny tangent, you gotta the wraith guards as a whole, you just have to you have to redo that unit, because like no one's taking wraith cannons. First off, they're doo-doo butter, so
Hmm.
you're only taking the flamers, and then they don't really like, so like to me, like Wraithguard need like a new ability. Like maybe their
Yeah.
ability is like they overwatch on, I don't know. Like they get to overwatch for no CP or something like that. Like they can like they need a different ability, and then all of those units are immediately viable.
Yeah, I've liked the idea of giving them pistol so they can shoot things in engagement like they could in the
Yeah,
index, you know?
more than two melee attacks,
Yeah, yeah,
but
that would
we're
help as
we're
well.
tangent we're
Yeah.
tangenting on the wraiths, which we
Yeah.
could probably talk for like 2 hours
Oh,
about.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there because I know we've been talking for a while, but thanks for coming on, Drake. I really appreciate it.
It
Grimdark
was a pleasure.
Breakdowns, everybody. Grimdark Breakdowns, semi newer channel, just started in December. Really good content, growing fast. I'll link the channel in the description for those of you who want to go over and throw a sub and a like on his videos. I haven't watched all the videos, but I've watched a couple of them. They're very well made and put together. So thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. And let's do this again sometime. Just reach out whenever you want to talk to me. I'm happy to do an interview with you, and we'll vibe about some other topic.
Or you know what? Well, maybe we'll do is we'll do this again, and I'll have you come over on mine, and that way we can expose all of our guys, and they can come and check you guys out.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome. I'd love to be over there on your channel. 100%.
All right.
Good
Well,
deal,
stay
man.
tuned, y'all. We'll do that. We'll have him over, and then you guys can see. I guess the second part we'll do it over on our channel.
Sounds good, my friend. Sounds good. All right, man. I will see you later, and everybody out there. Again, all the info is going to be in the description, and peace out. See you guys next time.